Well, it's Friday the 18th of October, and there's 3 holes in the ground. The full moon in Aries has passed, and Mercury is in Scorpio. Mercury is still pre-retrograde. Ideas should be documented and gestated, ready for the space weather to give them birth. This is episode 1929 of 301 Permanently Moved Online, a personal podcast 301 seconds in length, written, recorded, and edited in 1 hour by me at the JMO. Hello everyone, I'm back again. Another output of my weekly hour-long burst of intensity. I must admit, once again, that as I sit down to make this show and type these first words into the Google Doc, I have no idea what's going to come from my fingertips. A few people have asked about how fast I write the 1k words needed to make this show, and the answer is that it's all first draft, and the words on the page are exactly what poured out of my brain. The audio essays I've made this year, I've been pleased with, as it has honed my ability to offload or data dump an argument that has been gestating in my head throughout the week in one go. Sadly, or perhaps thankfully, for the last couple of weeks, I haven't had anything that has occupied my thoughts. I tend to be much less inside my head when I'm extremely busy, with the run up to Unsound, then the week away, etc. And this week, I've mainly been up to my elbows in WordPress building a new personal website, consolidating many parts of my previously deliberate disparate online presence. But the thing that I've been thinking about mainly this week has carried over from the last. My friends inspire me. I went to see Holly Herndon this week perform Proto at the Barbican Hall in London, and yet again I cannot escape the feeling of being inspired by seeing people achieve and execute, doing and sharing the things that they love and are passionate about. The performance was fantastic, and it was a real pleasure to see Holly, Matt, and the whole ensemble enjoying the show as much as the audience. Speaking of which, you couldn't shake a stick at the audience without a segment of London's creative scene falling out. I went with my friend Jen, a photographer, who had no idea what to expect when the lights went down, and her review of the show was that it was emotional, and I cannot agree more. Keep up the good work, team. Speaking of inspiration, my good friend and comrade Hugh Lemmy has been making work that excites him over on his newsletter, Utopian Drivel, found at hugh.substack.com. That in turn inspires me. We spent many hours talking about our creative lives earlier in the summer when hiking Mount Montserrat outside Barcelona where he lives, and he has said some kind words about Permanently Moved in his newsletter previously. He has recently started making audio versions of his newsletter, an audio show which is perhaps the opposite of this one. Permanently Moved primarily being an audio project that has spawned a zine, which if you haven't seen it can be found at thejmo.net/zine. Whereas Utopian Drivel is an outlet of a writer who has moved into creating audio. This week is his second audio experiment, and it's fantastic. He was talking about his experience of Barcelona and the city's response to the jailing of the pro-independence politicians for sedition. Here is a clip from the opening of this week's newsletter.
There was a storm last night. The lightning flashes were unusually bright, unusually electrical, and they seemed to dissipate across the whole night sky. It woke me, and I sat by the open balcony door in my dressing gown, trying to capture the intensity of it. But today there isn't a cloud in the sky, just the insistent buzzing of helicopters. The Guardia Civil and the Mossos have been hovering over my neighbourhood since midday, surveilling protesters who've managed to shut down Plaza España, the huge roundabout which connects the major city thoroughfares of Parallel and Gran Via.
I think you'll agree that that sounds fantastic and is a huge inspiration to me this week. I highly recommend that you all head over to hugh.substack.com right away and subscribe. Or, if you prefer your audio content about villains and gays, Hugh is also the co-host of Bad Gays, a podcast about evil and complicated gay men in history. Links to both in the show notes. I've said several times on here that I have other audio ideas that I want to work on, one of which, an audio comic, is in progress. But since Hugh published that newsletter last week, recorded with the same field mic that I reviewed last year in episode 1810, I now want to do something ambitious. A good project to work on as the days get colder and the nights get longer. I just need to execute. Move things from the world of ideas in my head and manifest them through action. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. I was talking to a writer recently who was telling me that they have a complicated relationship with readers who get in touch with something like, "How did you get into my brain?" Or, "Reading your article was like someone actually got around to publishing some of the things that I've been thinking about," as if there's some equivalence between having thoughts about something and actually writing them down. It's hitting publish that matters if we want to shed our fears of being ordinary. In the beginning, this show, as it is now today, was a goal of mine. And now it's time to make those goals bigger.